let me, I have to, I mean, I'm okay unless Steph needs it, but I got to warn everybody. We're going to be dealing with, hopefully, a report back from the investigators by the 29th. That is not going to be a small meeting. Okay? Hold on. That's okay. Before questions, can I ask staff, would you also like, would staff also wish that the first reading of the policy DHD also be read 12 and 13 and 14? Okay, but number 12? That's the reading of the revisions policy JF. Okay, now I'm going to go to both Ms. Baldridge and then to Ms. Roberts. Ms. Roberts.
My only thing on the first reading, there's no action that can be listed at the first reading, and unless someone has some concern, I don't think there's any action that can be taken. You simply, it's on your agenda as a first reading. If we don't cover those, then you need at least 2 more board meetings before they can be adopted, because you have to go through a first and a second reading. So I would say all you basically need to do is ask if there are any questions or anything, discuss them if you need to discuss. And so that at least at the next agenda they can be on for a second reading.
Concern on item number 13, 14.
Well, okay. For a first reading, though, isn't it? Okay.
Can I have a point of clarification?
Yes, sir.
Even if you read it the first time, you can still have discussion during the second reading, correct?
That is correct.
So from an administrative point of view, reading it tonight and acknowledging it doesn't prevent you from having the ability to relook at it a second time. If we don't do it tonight, then we will need to put it on the agenda for 2 more meetings, correct?
That's correct.
So I actually, personally, would like to consider those items as a first read, and I want Sherry's concerns to be addressed, but I would hope that we could do that during the second read, because I suspect the numerical length of the agenda is going to be going upwards, not downwards in the future.
We're hoping not, but probably
That's
for
a
at least for
suspicion.
August, yes. Does anybody have a problem with tabling number 9 and 10, which is the second reading?
No.
Staff, any concerns with tabling 9 and 10? Okay. Ms. Collins, did you actually make the formal motions? Okay. So the motion's been made and seconded. However, just for myself before, I think it would not hurt us to do the first readings of 11 through 14 in respect to tabling them for number 9 and 10. I will not agree, because staff does need number 12 at least first read tonight. My preference would be that we would table number 9 and 10 and do the first reading of the next 4 and move on to the consent calendar. So I will make a substitute motion that we Yes, okay. I'm going to make a substitute motion that we table number 9 and 10 until the August board meeting, and that we move forward with the first reading only of 11 and 12, 13 and 14, understanding that at the second reading we can have discussion and make changes. Is there a second for my motion?
Second.
Okay. By procedure, we vote on the substitute motion first, and if that passes, then there's not a need to vote on the first motion. If that fails, then we vote on the first motion. All in favor of my motion to table number 9 and 10, but proceed with 11, 12, 13, and 14?
Just an information
Sure.
question, Washington. I'm sorry.
Not looking.
It's a point of clarification. Does this motion mean we're acknowledging the first reading of the last three, or we're just doing it?
With this motion, we would proceed with number 11, 12.
Okay. So we have to address the first reading.
Okay. All in favor of the motion to table 9 and 10 and proceed with 11 through 15, raise your hands. All and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'm not doing this to be disagreeable, but I don't have the exhibits once again. So I apologize for that. And I didn't notice this beforehand. But since I don't have the exhibits, I'm not able to discuss this. I feel that you should go ahead and vote, though, but I'm unable to participate.
And again, tonight, we're only reading these items. We're not discussing them and we're not voting on them.
Kathy, we're not going to be taking any action anyway. At the next meeting, we could really talk about the changes and any, which I have.
Well, I thought that you wanted to discuss some of that for the
Yes.
first read.
Ms. Jankowski, wait, some of the, for policy changes, they have to go through a first reading.
Thank you for clarifying that as well.
Ms. Mulder, did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Since we have lengthy agendas and people are coming from Tucson and going to Phoenix, I just wondered if it's set in stone that they're always 5 and if that's...
It's not always at 5, but we've heard from staff and teachers and parents that if we meet earlier in the day, a lot of times they don't get to attend the meeting. So we do try to schedule them at 5. I will consider moving it an hour earlier if the board agenda is very lengthy. Okay. With that, the motion's passed. Dr. Jankowski.
You may hate me for this, but is it possible to do some meetings on Saturdays?
Not from my wife's perspective.
I want to make
You can
another.
tell your wife to blame me.
I'd like to make another comment about the schedule. And that, Mr. Williams?
I'm sorry, the interpreters can't keep up when there's more than one person.
I'm sorry. I was being asked a procedural question about whether we needed to act on the original motion. Once a substitute motion passes, we don't act on the original motion. So now we are on item number 11.
Mr. Williams, can I make a comment over here?
Yes, I'm sorry.
It is very difficult for some people on short notice to just all of a sudden arrive an hour earlier because the agenda is longer. So if you're going to do that, I would request that that be done several weeks in advance. There are just commitments that are not movable, so you can't just show up an hour ahead.
I understand Dr. Sims.
It's taking much longer to read through the agenda items, so please make sure that I have plenty of notice.
I am hopeful that we can get the agenda out at least a week in advance. Several weeks in advance, sometimes things come up, but maybe we can get an initial agenda out. It may be revised prior to the meeting, but at least we get an initial agenda out and the date and time that the event's going to happen. Now we're on number 11, first reading revised policy J2, student concerns, complaints, and grievances for discussion only. This is exhibit number G. Staff, do I read these? Do I read these or are these read by staff? Okay. The topic is the first reading of revised concerns, complaints. You have the abstract. There is no action needed at this time since this is the first reading. Would anyone on the board like to have this read? Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 12. Agenda item number 12 is the first reading of revisions to policy JF, student admissions for discussion only, exhibit H. So this is the first reading of revised policy JF, student admissions for discussion only. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing no board action is required, we'll be moving on to item number 13, sorry. First reading of policy BHD, board community communications for discussion only, exhibit I. Official communication between the board and the community is subject to the following. Any community member who exhausts the opportunity of discussing at the administrative level may communicate with the board in writing. No anonymous communications will be considered by the board. A member of the community who wishes to address the board in person may do so by the following procedures in policy BEDH. Official board communications, board policies, board concerns, board action as appropriate will be imparted to the community by the superintendent. Again, this is the first reading. No discussion or action is required. Any questions or comments? With that, we'll move on to item number 14, first reading of policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings for discussion only, exhibit J. You have the abstract in front of you, although I understand Dr. Jankowski does not. I'd be happy to read through it for her if you'd like me to do that, Dr. Jankowski.
Yeah, I don't have it, so I
Okay.
wouldn't be able to vote on that.
I'll read this then. All regular board and special meetings are subject to the public meeting law. The board invites the viewpoints of citizens throughout the state and considers the responsible presentation of those viewpoints vital to the efficient operation of Asdb. The board also recognizes its responsibility for the proper governance of Asdb and therefore the need to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner. The board therefore establishes the following procedures to receive input from citizens. Any individual desiring to address the board shall complete a form or request to address the board and give the form to the superintendent prior to the start of the board meeting. The board president shall be responsible for recognizing speakers, maintaining proper order, and adhering to any time limit set. Questions of fact asked by the public shall, when appropriate, be answered by the president or referred to the superintendent for reply. Questions requiring investigations shall be referred to the superintendent for a later report to the board. Questions or comments on matters that are currently under legal review will not receive a response. If considered necessary, the president shall set a time limit on the length of the comment period. In order to ensure that each individual has an opportunity to address the board, the president may also set a time limit for individual speakers. Members of the public may be recognized by the president to assist the board with information for the conduct of its official business. Personal attacks on board members, employees, or other persons in attendance or absent by individuals who address the board are discouraged. Presenters are cautioned that statements or representations concerning others that convey an unjustly unfavorable impression may subject to the presenter to civil action for defamation policies. For defamation, policies KE, KEB, KEC, and KEP are provided by the board for disposition of legitimate complaints, including those involving individuals. Upon conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the board may respond to any criticisms made by an individual who has addressed the board. The superintendent shall ensure that a copy of this policy is posted at the entrance of the board meetings and that an adequate supply of forms are available. I'm a little dizzy. There's no action required on this. Any comments or questions? Okay, we are on the consent, number 5, consent agenda for discussion, consideration, and possible action. Is there anything on the consent agenda that any board member wishes to take separately? Consent agenda would, for the abstract number 1, award of Lucy S. Morrison Scholarship to a 2013 Asdb graduate, approval of the December 13th, April 9th, 2013, and April 30th, 2013 board meeting minutes, approval of contracts and/or agreements, approval of donations, and approval of student out-of-state travel for SY 2012, 2013, and SY 2013 and 2014. Should I have a motion?